So my name is Craig. I'm going to do a little project, or a little talk on our new UPS system. It's a project we did over the last year and a half, and it's actually a really neat little project. I really think it's cool. So the first thing is, most of us, hopefully, we're lucky enough to have one of these little UPSs in our facility. Basically, it's a big battery. You know, it protects your drives and protects keeps your computers up. If you're in a big facility, hopefully you got a big one. Some places have little smaller ones. But yeah, hopefully you got one of these things. So they're really helpful to have. Now, if you have one for long enough, you've seen that sometimes things can happen to them. So this is an inverter from a UPS that was in a data center. And basically it was installed incorrectly and it had too much heat and it burned out the capacitors, and then the inverter went, and they went offline. So they're kind of crazy as far as making sure that you keep on top of them. You don't just put it in and walk away. So our current system, before the upgrade, we had a rack, and the rack has 2 power bars, and the power bars hit a nice little UPS, and the UPS hits just a breaker panel, and then we had a diesel generator and a transfer switch, and then we just had utility power. So if we had an issue, the UPS would give us coverage until this diesel would spin up. But yeah, so in engineering, there's something called the first rule of redundancy, and it says 2 is 1 and 1 is none, which basically means if something's really important, you really have to make sure you have 2 of them. So we were able to do a project where we were actually able to make this system redundant, so we had less points of failure. So the beautiful thing is, in each rack in our facility, we have 2 power bars. Each one of those power bars feeds a separate UPS, and this UPS can hold the entire load of the entire system. And then they got separate breaker panels, just in case we have a failure in the breaker panel level, and separate transfer switches between our diesel generator and our utility power. So I'll just show it again. So that was before and that's after. Now, when you do this, every now and then you do run into a situation where you have a device that doesn't have dual power supplies. So ideally, when you try to buy a server, you get dual power supplies, but when you can't, you have to use this little thing called an ATS. And it basically plugs into each power bar, and you can plug a single device into it, and it'll switch automatically when it sees loss of power. So here's some nice pictures of our system. So if you look at this rack right here, we have 1 power bar that's on one side of the system, and another power bar that's on the other. And this would feed our UPS B, and this feeds our UPS A. And you'll see that this server right here, 1 plug feeds that guy, and 1 plug feeds that guy. So we have nice redundancy. So this was this ATS thing I was talking about. It's an automatic transfer switch, and its job is anything you plug in here, you can switch between a main and a backup when either side fails. Now, I was very skeptical of this device initially. I thought, you know, does it actually switch fast enough to make this thing work? And I put some really sensitive computers on it, and it switched no problem. So I was very impressed with its overall performance. Initially, I was quite skeptical. So here's a picture of the 2 separate breaker panels. So we have them in 2 physical locations, which gives us a little bit more redundancy. And if any one breaker pops, the other side will take over. So it just gives us, if we ever had to do maintenance, we could take one side down. These are the 2 separate UPSs. They're 160 kVA. Each one has a running time of at least 70 minutes. There's the one that has a little less load on it will do 90 minutes, and there's one with a little more load and it does 70. And we have some non-critical loads that are just on A. So these are the little transfer switches, and their job is to bring up the diesel when it's time to kick over. And there's 1 for A and 1 for B. They're actually timed slightly differently, so they don't both take the load onto the diesel generator at the same time. All right, so advantages and disadvantages. So the advantages are we reduce single points of failure, which is good, and it makes it much more easy for maintenance and upgrades in the future. The disadvantage, obviously, is cost. Those little ATS units roughly cost us about $600. So when you're speccing out a new piece of equipment, you have to decide if a second power supply is more cost effective than looking at a single power supply device.
Is that much?
Well, there's actually 8 ports on each one of these things, so you know you can bring it down a little bit. But
each ATS is 60.
Yeah, each ATS, which has 8 plugs on it, so you could power 8 single devices, single power supply devices. All right, questions? Go ahead, Josh. Chris.
You haven't turned on the generator yet?
The generator gets tested every month. I haven't seen it spin up in the last year. Yeah, so we haven't used it recently, but it does get tested every month. So.
Gas tanks.
How many dVA is the generator?
It's 500. 500. Yeah.
So when you're doing your generator testing, are you doing warm starts or are you doing cold starts?
I believe it's cold start, and we also have a load bank we connect to it, so we can run it for a little bit of time just to make sure that it can do its job. Yeah. And the generator startup is really automated, like those transfer switches just do it automatically. We do a yearly power outage, which is probably the last time it ran for a sustained period of time, and they, generally it just kicks in and we don't have to watch it. We're all here and ready, but generally it works very smoothly. Okay.
Is everything that's powered by the generator go through the UPS, or does anything just get generator power without UPS?
Pretty much everything gets, I think the one exception to that is our AC systems for air conditioning. I believe we have some of them that are only on APS, are only on diesel generator. And also we feed another data center that's in the building for IT, and they have their own separate UPS. So, but almost everything, except for like really crazy inductive loads like air conditioners, everything is on the UPS.
Is your studio lighting on the first floor on generator UPS?
I believe it is. They've upgraded to LED lighting, so it's much more effective at taking those loads. So. Cool. All right. Done.
Is your generator in the basement?
Generator is on the roof.
On the roof?
Yeah. We have a tank in the basement with extra fuel, and there's a day tank up there. So. Yeah, well, the diesel tank could, but the generator's on the roof, so it's good. Yeah. Go ahead.
When you put the generator up on the roof, did you have to get approval from your neighbors around here?
I don't recall. I think it was installed in around the 2000 time, so I actually wasn't here, so it was before my time. I imagine they had to go through some kind of approval process. I know most of these large buildings have generators just for utility power, like for their elevators and security lights and stuff, and the building has a separate generator from us that runs these loads. So, cool. Alrighty.
So